I love animals, but until I made this video, I hadn't been to a zoo since I was a little kid. So when I saw Planet Zoo on the Steam Summer Sale, I knew what I had to do. As I booted up the game, the excitement started to get to me, and it didn't take long for me to make a very spontaneous decision. Why does this look like Zach Oyama, low-key? I feel like I'm just making Zach Oyama. It's not gonna give me like an example? I don't know how to make a zoo. Yo, what are you doing this weekend? You down for a zoo trip? So I packed my bag and headed down the road to see my good buddy Jonah, or Ace if you've been around the channel, who I hadn't seen since college. So I guess the first animal I got to see on this zoo trip was actually his dog Pippin. The night I arrived, we caught a crazy soccer game with a goal and extra time to win it, hit the town Saturday, church on Sunday, and then the time had come. When I got back home, I was so excited to start building my own zoo. So what I'm going to be doing for the rest of this video is cutting back and forth a little bit between the zoo in the game and the zoo that I went to in real life. But before we jump right in, I'm going to let you know this is definitely a game where you really want to play the tutorial and pay attention.
As you can see, it's a lovely space for animals, but it's missing a certain something.
It's missing animals.
Two somethings. Warthogs. So
I were a
decided to
young
adopt a pair of them.
warthog.
To adopt
There's a lot more that goes into running a zoo than I would have thought. The most confusing part of learning this game for me was the fences, or I guess the enclosure walls. What? So thankfully I was able to make a mistake like this early and in one of the tutorial worlds rather than my own zoo. You can see I was a little upset. I'm telling you, this game's a little more complicated than it looks. Just look at me trying to put paths down. I finally go to create my own zoo, and I can't figure out how to make symmetrical paths. I gotta look up a YouTube tutorial. Eventually, I was able to put together a nice little plaza at the entrance of the zoo with an information booth, food, water, and a break room for my employees. And finally, it was time to bring our first animals into the zoo. I started off with a walkthrough exhibit because there was one animal that I couldn't stop thinking about when I got home. I'm not 100% sure that the bats I saw in person were Egyptian fruit bats, but they were bats and they ate fruit, so close enough. I just think bats are so unique and intelligent, so it was an easy decision for me, even though some professional Planet Zoo players might criticize me on it, to go ahead and spend all of my conservation tokens on these bats, which if you don't know, conservation tokens are pretty hard to get. Apparently it wasn't until the 1700s or 1800s that people started associating bats with vampires and labeling them as spooky, but I think they're just misunderstood. Something I didn't know was that apparently bats are responsible for pollinating about 70% of the fruit on our planet. That's crazy. I loved watching the bats fly around both in my virtual zoo and at the real zoo. And if you need more evidence about how much I love bats, when I was coming up with my channel logo, the two main influences were my favorite Pokemon Noivern and these bats. I decided to make this the creepy crawly section of the zoo with spiders and snakes, but for now all I could afford was Goliath beetles. What I didn't know is how much money I was going to be making off of these beetles, but we'll talk about that later. I had to hire my first zookeeper to take care of the bats, and I decided to start naming all my staff after content creators. The next animal I invested in were these magnificent wildebeests. I'm actually too nice because I made their habitat like really big. Like, look how long it takes my one keeper to get across the whole habitat. Come on, Arlie, pick it up. I discovered a unique mechanic with this habitat where some animals can be placed in the same habitat and actually enrich each other's lifestyle, so welcome in our ostriches. I had to make a few more hires for the team, and then it was on to building our next key habitat. One of the other animals that I did not expect to be so fascinated by were the meerkats. They look so curious all the time. And we joked that this guy up top was on security detail. So I had to make sure I built some rocks for my little dudes to climb around on as well. Despite having cat in their name, they're actually a type of mongoose. They're super intelligent. They know how to rip off scorpion tails to avoid the venom, and they have distinct social roles. Groups of meerkats are actually called mobs or gangs. Seriously, Google it. And sometimes they get into wars with other gangs. I bet you didn't know meerkats were so street. Another cool part about meerkats the game reflects is how meerkats love to burrow underground. And the game even gives you a camera in the burrow so you can keep watching your meerkats when they're just down here chilling. And shortly after establishing the meerkat habitat, I discovered you can actually attract protesters to your zoo. Now don't worry, it wasn't anything I did per se, I'm a great zoo owner. It just turns out Lanwabo here got up on this rock somehow and then discovered that he could not get down. So the game thought his entire habitat was like 2 pixels wide. Now that I've got my first few habitats established, I'm starting to pull in a good amount of revenue. Or so I thought. Either way, it was time to get down to business. I made a few more creepy crawly exhibits past the bats and struggled to get the paths how I wanted. I released some ostriches into the wild to make space and earn tokens. I started working on an aquatic area and struggled to get the paths how I wanted. I put down some dirt to make a big viewing area for the aquatic animals, then some snack and gift booths beside it where I struggled to get the paths how I wanted. I have a million positive things to say about this game, but the paths make me want to fight someone. I got really into detailing the next habitat, and I also tried to spruce up how all the shops looked as well. I evaluated my current staff and realized that if I wanted to unlock some of the other architecture in the game, I was going to need a dedicated team of geniuses just on research. Next, I purchased some good old American gators. And I wish I could say I had more B-roll of gators at the zoo, but they don't do much other than just brood villainously. They look super sick in the game, though. The real zoo did also have an albino gator, but again, he didn't do much. After the gators, my research on the spooky theme was done, and I could finally start making the west wing of my zoo look more like a zoo and less like a truck stop with animals. Decorating little details like this are the type of thing you can accidentally spend hours on. Trust me, I know. Remember how I said those Goliath beetles were gonna make me a lot of money? Well, it was around this time that I realized those dudes had been breeding like crazy. So in one fell swoop, I think I sold over 100. I don't know who out there bought them, and I don't think I want to know why. Now, believe it or not, I may have gotten a little too carried away on my overjoyous decoration spending spree. The zoo was losing money fast. I'm sorry to report that, genuinely, we mysteriously lost the footage of me letting go of Grizzy and Puffer. I'm sorry, boys. I'm sure you'll find some other means of income out there somewhere. I was genuinely starting to get worried about whether or not I had botched it, and the zoo was just gonna go under. So I knew it was time to go all out on one big-ticket animal, and thank goodness I made the right choice. A polar bear was not on my list of animals I thought was gonna blow my mind at the real zoo, but it did. I was so impressed with the game's ability to capture how cool these big guys are. And when I say big guys, I'm talking 1,600 pounds and can make a snack out of a seal big. But for as big as they are, I honestly wasn't aware just how much of a knack for swimming these bears had. But boy, I'm glad I got to see the show in person. According to National Geographic, a polar bear once swam 426 miles straight, a feat that took 9 days. Thankfully, when they get out of the water, underneath that white fur is actually black skin that helps them soak in more sunlight to stay warm. With our new polar bear on the scene, we were back to making a profit. I was even able to drop $5 grand on some advertising. I was saving up my conservation tokens for something in particular, but in the meantime, there were some other animals that caught my eye, and I could buy them with cash. Red foxes can be found all over the world, and as you can imagine, they're typically red. But the one I found was different. So I spent a lot of time putting together the perfect habitat for him, knowing that in my headcanon, the black fox was gonna be one of the unique attractions our zoo is known for. Like, he's in all the commercials, so the place has to look nice. But it doesn't matter if I think it's nice, it matters what he thinks. And this was the first animal that I realized I could name, so everyone meet Doom. I've known Doom for less than 5 minutes, and I would die for him. I also wanted to make sure he had some company, so this is Sweetie, and this is Lily. I don't know how I just keep accidentally picking animals that breed so fast, but at least baby foxes are fun to watch. Across from the foxes in our zoo, I decided to get some turtles. Turtles are one of the animals where you can actually put a path that goes into the exhibit, but it turns out turtles are really, really shy. So I ended up having to remove the path that went into the exhibit. But honestly, I can't blame them. I mean, apparently people really, really want to see turtles. Then I did a lot of random small tasks around the zoo, like adding bathrooms, decorating, and then I found this random guy.
My name is Norm.
I started cracking down on organizing my work zones, and then I added the first animal to the zoo that I didn't know existed before this game, the African wild dog. The game says that these guys are endangered because their real-life habitats change so often, so I was happy to give a few a consistent home. And while I may not have known what they were before, their colorful fur and those big round ears are going to be hard to forget. I had a very particular animal in mind that I wanted to spend my conservation tokens on next. And after scrolling through the list of available animals to me, over and over, checking back and seeing if it was there, finally it was time. I finally got a hippo! And he hated it here. Turns out hippos are kind of needy, which is one of the reasons why they're currently classified as vulnerable, which is one step before endangered. The biggest issue they face right now in the real world, and the one that I had to take time to fix in my zoo, is lack of water. I didn't know just how much time hippos needed to spend in the water. Turns out they can even sleep underwater, and it's where they spend most of their life. I guess that shouldn't have surprised me, since I took Greek in college and we learned that Ipos means horse and Patomos means river. Creative name, Greeks. By getting a second hippo and being able to breed them, I was able to get plenty more conservation tokens. I was excited to spend them on another gentle giant. It didn't take a trip to the zoo to remind me elephants were cool. In fact, at the zoo, the elephants weren't doing too much. But elephants are the largest land animal on Earth. So how perfect is it that they have a long trunk they can use to easily reach things on the ground and transport water to their mouths? Elephants also love making a mess. Playing in the dirt and mud isn't just a social thing. It helps protect their skin from the sun and from bug bites. Different educated sources talk about how strong they think an elephant's memory is, and how they can even remember humans they come into contact with. I just wish they could talk. Who wouldn't want to listen to this geezer tell stories about the savannah back in their day? Speaking of, look at this baby elephant. Believe it or not, they're born about 3 feet tall and several hundred pounds. I don't know what the odds are of a red fox not being red, so when I saw this one available, I had to make another impulse buy. His name is Law. Law was never that social, but who can blame him? He was consistently surrounded by pups at all times. I mean, these foxes were breeding so fast that I could not sell them fast enough to keep the habitat from being overcrowded. I decided I really wanted to try and start taking decorations in my zoo pretty seriously. You have no idea how long it took me to make this fountain. Made a quick outside hire, and then I started the zoo's big cat era. The first big cat I could get was a cheetah. His name is Bakari. Despite being able to run around 70 miles per hour, Bakari was a pretty chill dude who just liked to nap. I knew that making such a massive expansion north of my zoo for all these big cats was going to take a lot of work, so we needed more team members. I decided the zoo felt a little flat, so I needed to add some dirt. Like a lot of dirt. Like a lot. I placed the habitat walls, and when I tried to connect it to the rest of the park, I couldn't get the paths how I wanted. Then when I was ready to build more habitats, I couldn't decide between the Siberian tiger and the Bengal tiger. So we're gonna go with both. Now, both tigers weren't available right away, but there's still plenty of stuff we can do in the meantime, like go ahead and pick up a few other animals, and also go ahead and build the tiger habitats. I tried to get really in depth with both of their habitats. This is one of the best parts of the game, for real. Like, if you like Minecraft or The Sims, get on here and just decorate some habitats. I wanted different parts of the zoo to look unique from each other, so I decided to put in this big lake before building more habitats to the east. Plus, in my headcanon, the zoo needs an outdoor space for parties and stuff. I'm really immersed here, guys. I prepped one more big cat habitat, and then a few more habitats for animals I'd buy while I waited for the big cats to be available. Like this zebra. I feel like zebras have to be the easiest animals to maintain at the zoo. They're very social and protective of each other, but they mostly just vibe and eat grass because they're chill guys. Our Bengal tiger, on the other hand, probably requires a lot more effort. While he looks like a big softie, this guy can eat around 80 pounds of meat in one hunt. The tiger itself can be up to 10 feet long if you include its tail, and over 600 pounds. I had just 2 more habitats that I wanted to get set up, one of which required the best playground possible. It's pretty well known that lemurs originate from Madagascar, but there's a lot I didn't know about them until this video. Female lemurs are usually in charge when it comes to their social structure, pushing males out of prime sleeping positions and stealing their food. They're also pretty crucial to the ecosystem in Madagascar because of the way they spread seeds, whether the seeds get stuck to their fur or they happen to toss aside a fruit. Also, I don't know why they sit like this, but I love it. It's hilarious, it amuses me. Anyone who knows me knows that I end up sitting in weird positions all the time, so I can relate. Also, get this. Ring-tailed lemurs have scent glands on their wrists and chests, and according to Lemur Conservation Network, males use these glands to attract mates, but also get into fights with other males just throwing stank at each other. Finally, I was really excited to get a good look at a rhino. In my mind, they're just the perfect example of an animal I'd never have any business being around if it wasn't at the zoo. As soon as I dropped him in his habitat, he wanted to eat. And then he rested. And then he ate some more. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, since at the real zoo that seemed to be his routine as well. If you can believe it, rhinos don't have the best eyesight, but they make up for it with their incredible sense of smell and hearing. Also, according to the International Rhino Foundation, the reason they're called white rhinos is because there was a word in Africa they used to describe their mouths as wide with a D, and English speakers just misinterpreted it as white. Females and younger rhinos tend to be more social, but old bulls like this one prefer to go it alone. There were just a few more animals that I felt like our zoo needed before we could call it complete, and a giraffe was one of them. Unfortunately, we just missed the giraffes in our trip to the zoo, but at 14 feet tall, it certainly wasn't because they were hard to see. And this one's just a female. Males can get up to 18 feet tall, and if all that neck wasn't enough, their tongues can get up to 20 inches long. Makes sense though when all you really eat is leaves from trees. I finally got to bring in our Siberian tiger, who quickly took a liking to her new home. The Siberian tiger is the largest of the big cats, and it's adapted incredibly well to living in cold and snowy environments. Sadly, the number of Siberian tigers in the wild has been on decline. In their part of the world, they're hunted for parts of their body that locals believe can give them strength, or they'll even offer tiger meat at a high price. I normally don't get fazed by stuff like this, but the short National Geographic video I watched low-key had me steaming. It makes sense why you can get conservation points in the game by taking in and properly raising animals like this one. Lastly, to tie the whole zoo together, a West African lion. The second largest cat, but probably the most popular thanks to Disney. Lions are the only big cat to live in social groups called prides. The pride on our zoo trip was taking a fat nap. But if they hadn't been, according to National Geographic, we could have heard their roars from up to 5 miles away. One reason for all that volume is so that any other lions that can hear it will know they're encroaching on claimed territory. Some studies suggest that a lion's mane is helpful in impressing potential mates. And a male lion needs to make sure he finds a good partner, since the females are the ones who do most of the hunting. I have one more super important thing that I want to show you. But before I do, I just want to say thank you so much for watching. I've never made a video like this before. It took so much more effort and time than I thought it would, but I really loved it. I really loved doing this and just putting my heart and soul into this video. So if you enjoyed, please let me know. Leave a like, leave a comment below, and tell me what you think, or just tell me your favorite animal, because I'm interested in that kind of stuff. I can't wait to make more great content across a whole bunch of different games. So be sure to stay tuned. But for now, have a good rest of your day, and check this out.